Can you imagine that one of the biggest money laundering schemes happened in Africa? Meet, let's call him Daniel, a notorious drug dealer that was based in the United States. Now, Daniel was a Ghanaian and things hadn't worked out for him in the motherland, so he found a way and managed to move to the United States where things were working out better for him. He stayed in America for over 20 years, and during that time, he was affiliated with some of the biggest gangs and drug dealers and anybody nefarious. But he started really small. He started by peddling, white powder, the white powder that you sniff on the block. Quick sells, and little by little he got bigger and bigger. He eventually took a trip down to Southern America, and there he met Sergio Pascal, who was a notoriously big drug lord in that area. Now Sergio quickly took a liking to Daniel and gave him a spot and told him, you know what, I'm going to train you, I'm going to teach you our ways, these are the people you're going to talk to. And that is how Daniel rose through the ranks. By the time he was fully integrated into the organization, into the society, he was peddling across over 6 different countries. But of course, his home base was the United States. So he would bring shipments across the border and everything. 10 years into the business, Daniel is a high-ranking official within their organization. He knows everybody, he's moving a little mad. And he realizes that the DEA in America has some heat on them. The streets are hot, people are getting caught, and very quickly things start to turn sour. Now, Daniel's organization and his team members had already got into so many altercations with the DEA. 2 of them had been unalived, a few more had been put in jail. Things were getting messy. But Daniel was prominent, he had connections, he knew people, and he quickly decided that he needed to get the hell out of Dodge, he needed to leave the US, leave everything behind, and potentially start up a new organization somewhere else. His solution? Ghana, his homeland. So he started moving contacts, talking to people, what can he do, how can he get out? Thanks to his influence, he knew people, he had contacts, he had resources. So he quickly started negotiating with people in immigration, negotiating with people in the airports. All of those organizations, he knew somebody, he contacted somebody, and of course he bribed them. A solid $1 million here, another $1 million here, and then his plan was set. With that, he collected the leftover $17 million he had in cash and prepared to leave for Ghana. Luckily for him, and thanks to the power of money, he was able to fly out, private jet, land in Ghana with no questions from any immigration officers from any of the countries. But upon arriving in Ghana, he realized that he needed to restart and rebuild his network. He had cash, he had money, he needed to clean it. So he got in contact with one of his old boys from back in the day, somebody who was in the same scene as him and owed him a favor. This friend was in charge of hiring more people, other powder dealers, other people within the network, all other people in the underbelly of the system. He said, look, hire more people, get more contacts, let's figure out how to build an organization here in this motherland. But we also need contacts within the police department as well. We cannot get caught, we have to do this clean. Now, a question that Daniel needed answered: with all of this cash that he already had on hand, how was he supposed to put it into the system? How was he going to move it from point A to point B? So they sat down, they did some research, they talked to people. How to clean this money without bringing any suspicion and awareness. He was a big guy, he couldn't just appear with $1 million. So of course, people recommended real estate. It was doing well, it was a prosperous industry, money moves quickly within that space. But Daniel was like, nah, I don't want to do real estate. It's going well, but that's not for me. I want something different. And then he thought of it. Churches. Churches were protected. Churches didn't have taxes. Churches in Ghana are everywhere. So Daniel decided that, you know what, Africans like churches, and this is where I'm going to hide my money. But he needed a story, a believable story to explain how his church came about, what his solution was going to be, and why there was so much money in it to begin with. So he started small. A couple of months, he deleted all his social media accounts, wiped them clean of any pictures, information, and instead put up Bible verses. He announced that he'd be giving his life to Christ and that he was a changed man. Few months later, he announced that he was getting baptized, took videos, posted it. You know, he had a new persona he had to build, but that was only the start. Little by little, he would do different tasks. He would visit different churches, he would go to events, he would meet people, and he started to build a little cult. He would organize Zoom sessions, prayer meetings. He was really into his Christian life and faith. But that wasn't all. He would then invite other university girls and students to join him and say, we're pushing the agenda for Christ. Bring more people to join our Zoom meetings. Bring more people to join our calls. Bring more people to join our prayer session. And month by month, little by little, year by year, they were growing and growing fast. In a year and a half, hundreds of people were following Daniel and even started calling him Pastor Daniel. So then he again planted a seed of information. He said, oh, we're doing so well. Our church is growing. Our community is growing. We're all devoted to each other, to my vision and to Christ. We need a physical building. So again, little by little, he would raise funds for a physical building. We need to build a church. Bring your funds, bring your fund, brings your funds. And that's how he started. Every single donation that came to him, he would double the amount, change the number on it. If somebody gave 100, he would write 1,000. And that was how money was building. That money, that dirty money that he had brought, was being used to fund the building of a church. By the time the church was built, over thousands of people were part of the congregation. And every single Sunday, they became more and more individuals, people coming, people praying, people donating. And every single week, he would use the church to wash money. But as their enterprise grew, so did their money. As their money grew, so did their resources. As their resources grew, so did the number of people that were both in the church as well as those who were part of his underground organization. By this time, Daniel, or Pastor Daniel, was fully assimilated into the system. His underground business started to diversify. Aside from the powder, they also looked into other forms of drugs that they could sell, and little by little, that also grew.
Hold up, wait, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now let's go back to the show.
Eventually, Pastor Daniel announced that he was going to build a kindergarten school, and everybody was happy. The church was expanding, things were going well. But that kindergarten school was another front, a meeting place for all their organization businesses, all their recruitments, all their business was being done after hours at that kindergarten school. Now, as this is happening, there's somebody else who's had an issue with Pastor Daniel from the beginning. His name is Eric. Eric is somebody who had known Daniel back in the day and had always had an issue with him. He didn't like his story. He didn't like the way he carried himself. Every day, Pastor Daniel was moving around in luxury cars, taking private planes, and yes, he was supposed to be a pastor. That didn't make sense. His megachurch was crazy. People were flocking in. Eric knew that there was something wrong. But every single time Inspector Eric tried to speak to his bosses and try to get an inspection done for Pastor Daniel, it never worked out. They'd always tell him, look, he's a national treasure. He's a national asset. He's done nothing wrong. He's helping people. Why would you want to destroy that? And the more pushback he got, the less satisfied Eric was. Something was wrong and he needed to prove it. He tried all legal avenues and nothing happened. So he decided to try the illegal route. He went to see Pastor Daniel himself and lied to the man and said, look, I'm having marital issues. Can you help me? As Pastor Daniel closed his eyes and placed his hand upon his head, Eric placed a small listening device under his desk. Several days later, Eric used that device to listen in on conversations that were happening in that office. And as weeks passed on, he would hear information about shipments, cargo, money, large amounts, unexplainable amounts, and so much more. By this time, Eric realized that really and truly, Pastor Daniel was using his church as a front to peddle drugs and launder money. But it was so much bigger than that, and he had to find the answers. He needed more information. One evening, as Pastor Daniel was making a call, Eric overheard through the listening device that they were going to meet at the kindergarten school. So he set out and planned to follow Pastor Daniel there. Upon his arrival, he hid and waited patiently as he saw people entering the kindergarten school. It was after hours, it was late, and none of the people looked like teachers. Nobody looked like a parent. They all looked relatively nefarious, and a few of them were even church members. In that moment, Eric realized that the kindergarten school was also a front. It was actually their base of operation. But again, he needed more concrete evidence. There was so much more intel he had to gather. So he waited for everyone to leave. After hours, dark, everything closed up, and he went in. He needed to find physical proof. Inspector Eric searched that kindergarten building from top to bottom, left to right, everywhere he could find. In one classroom, he found something strange. There was something on the wall. He accidentally hit it and a panel opened. He stepped inside, and all around him were shelves stacked high with kilograms upon kilograms of cocaine powder. There was his evidence. He quickly grabbed his phone, started taking pictures left, right, center. This was all he needed. He collected all his information together, put together a dossier, and by Monday of the next week, he arrived at the Inspector Chief of Police's office and put down all his evidence. He said, "We absolutely need an arrest warrant for this man." But Eric had bitten off much more than he could chew. He then found out that so many people within the police department were implicated. Their hands were dirty. And to save face, the police department absolutely did not want to arrest Pastor Daniel in public. That would shame them, that would put them in trouble, that would make them unreliable. So instead, the police department came up with a plan. Pastor Daniel would have to leave. Quietly, no charges, but he was exiled from the country. Everything he had would have to be left where it was. At the same time, the police will get to save face. And that was it. Eric got no justice. He was quietly given some small money for his silence. As it would so happen, the country had a change in government. Old one out, new one in. The new government brought their own new inspector general, and the old one was quietly sent away. No one was to know what had happened under the ruling of the old inspector. Nothing raised eyebrows. Pastor Daniel is now out there somewhere, completely safe, potentially in another country, maybe doing this somewhere else. Now that's an entangled web. That's all I've got for you guys today. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at EntangledWebStories, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye!